speak at one time.
Over to you, Namita. Let's
All
start.
right. Thank you very much, Ranu Chacha, for this. Thank you very much to the family members who've all come here, you know, on a Sunday afternoon. And it's very mesmeric for me to see all your faces before me. And I also want to say that, you know, Brijbir Chacha ji, who started the G10 forum, whenever I argued with him about the non-representation of women on that forum, he always acknowledged that, yeah, actually, you know, I don't know how it happened, but we should have had some women on it. So I'm very happy that Ranu Chacha took this initiative further, along with Vishu Chacha and Madhu and Rahul and who's the fifth person? Chand. They took this ahead and, you know, they acknowledged that the family is indeed a very talented family and there's a spectrum of issues which we can address. So I also dedicate this to Brijbir Chacha, with whom I could have a debate or an argument or a discussion on any theme close to my heart. And, you know, he was always ready to engage. Enjoy this session. All right. So 34 years it's been, and we now have the new national policy of education. So the first question which should come to our minds is, why did we have to wait for 34 years? The last policy was in 1986. It was called the New Education Policy. And the first policy, the official policy of independent India, was in 1966. It was called the First Education Commission, also called the Kothari Commission. Means to upward mobility. Two kinds of mobility. One is social mobility, because if I get educated, I can aspire higher. I can actually get a better job. I can leverage a better life for myself and also for my family. And there are many success stories which have shown this in the post-liberalization world. That is one thing. So one is occupational mobility. The other is social mobility. When I have occupational mobility, I become upwardly mobile socially as well. And then I don't carry the label of my caste with me any longer. And if I wish, I can stop using my caste certification. And because there have been many success stories in the private sector of the lower castes and the marginalized castes who have made it big, we actually saw this happen.
Our people from a diversified country, we come from rural cultures, we are part of urbanized sectors, and education is important in every household. At the end of the day, every parent has probably said this to their child, that beta tumhe kuch banna hai. So how do you get that across? How does the child make himself competent enough? And I think primary level has to, under all circumstances, focus on medium of education being the baat-cheet. What do you need?
Striking features are the graded autonomy, the multidisciplinary, the multilingual, and a word that you sort of didn't emphasize is sustainable education, which I take it to be very, very important as departing from the past policies probably. And in practical application, this has really been neglected very badly. Having worked in vocational education college, I know that this has not been given the priority that it deserves. So taking these as the highlights of the education policy, again, I'll repeat, graded autonomy, multidiscipline, sustainable education, multilingual. These are the key elements of the new economic policy that strike me. And in the light of that, that centralization that we are seeing in the umbrella of the Higher Education Commission with its 4 pillars, which control almost all aspects of education, all aspects, whether that is justified or is going to achieve its goal or becoming over-controlling. The words that made me really, sit up are, it is written, it is light and tight control. Light and tight. These words are so vague. Light and yet tight. What do they mean? I don't understand. So the point is, what sort of control are we envisaging from these vertical pillars under that umbrella, which is the Higher Education Commission? Now, we know that one aspect is funding, the other is accreditation, the third is the courses and the curriculum and all those aspects of education. Now, since there are so many changes which have been thought of in the higher education field, I wonder, taking the present situation as it is, the spread of institutions.
Autonomy. Now, we already have autonomy, but it is a limited autonomy. The university still gives out the degrees, and the degrees of Mumbai University. But in many ways, we can start new classes, we can start new subjects. The teachers, we can recruit teachers as we want. So there is a certain degree of autonomy in the college, but full autonomy is something which has to be looked at very, very seriously, because the college is on its own. Of course, what happens is you depend on the private sector, on people who will give you money, for making. Of course, the government also gives you. It's not as if the government will not fund you. The government will fund a college which has a full autonomy, but there are lots of minus factors also and then what happens? That graded autonomy means that the colleges which already have grades, good grades, they are the ones who rise even more, while the colleges who have lesser grades will anyway not make it to autonomy.
On to the best schools and the best colleges, not only in India, but abroad. My concern is about the rural areas. And I personally feel that the major impact of any change in the education policy must have an impact in the rural areas, because that is where the largest number of children are. Schools and the infrastructure, it's in a terrible condition. Ranu was talking about unemployability of graduates in Gujarat. Any number of surveys have been carried out which show that even 5th standard students in rural schools can't do simple addition and subtraction. So the need of the hour really is to have very good infrastructure in the rural areas, to have very good teachers. And one thing which, Namita, I don't think I was looking for it in the new education policy, but I couldn't find any reference to it. We have to train the parents also. Parents in the rural areas have to play a very, very important role. No amount of policing by bureaucrats or by lower level education officers can keep the schools under check. But the parents can. What is the infrastructure of the school like? Is the teacher coming? Is he teaching regularly? And in addition to all this, we have to rely on new technology, on teaching through computers, through television. The best teachers in the states can be identified to prepare capsules which are transmitted, and the teachers need to be trained only in translating these lessons for the students. This is something which is already being done in Karnataka and some other states. But I think ultimately in the next 10, 15 years, if we can bring about a change in our rural education system, primary and secondary, it will make a major difference to the development of the country. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So Shantanu Bhaiya, I couldn't agree with you more, but what I couldn't mention because of paucity of time was that they are setting up special educational zones. Earlier, they used to have educationally backward blocks identified where kinds of inputs were being given at ashram schools and residential school girls, etc. So they're up.
You're not audible. Namita,
plan zones. Yeah.
You're not audible. You'll have to come closer to your laptop.
Okay. And you can hear now? Can
No.
you hear me, Suvira?
No.
Can all of you hear me, please? You can't hear me. So I've
now
lost
we
that.
can. Now we can, Namita Didi. Now you're better.
You can,
Just stay
you
where
can.
you are.
So yeah, so I'll stay where I am. So you know what is happening is that there are special educational which are going to be set up, which used to be earlier called the educationally backward blocks. And those special educational zones are going to work with local contextual conditions and plan the educational interventions. And the school management committee of every school is going to have parent representation, not for tokenism, but for actual democratic participation. This is what is being envisaged. Whether it will work or not, we don't know. Yeah.
Over to you, Vaishali.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Thanks, Suvira Bhabi. And a very thorough and brilliant presentation. As expected, Namita Didi, thank you. And thank you, Ranu Mama, for organizing this session. It's really very good. I had a few questions. One is around inclusivity, Namita Didi. Has the special ed for the differently abled been adequately considered in this NEP? This is an area where we see in other parts of the world, you know, there are a lot of opportunities for, you know, children who are differently able, but in India, we've not seen it. We are focusing on things like SC, ST, and so on and so forth, which has been on the agenda for decades. I think it's time in these current times to look at some of the other, you know, segments which require attention. My second question and point is around, you know, we are living in a global village. So, you know, with respect to entry of global universities, etc., don't you think as long as there is regulation of quality and profiteering, that, you know, we can increase the quality of supply of private and global educational institutions? Is that a bad thing or is that a good thing? Because that will increase competition and hence quality. Because, you know, part of what you presented reminded me of the debate we would have in the 90s, that should we let MNCs enter and what impact will it have on our, you know, sort of inbuilt companies, etc. So, you know, I guess your perspective on that would be good because, you know, we really look up to the IITs. But when you look at the infra which these institutions have compared to their counterparts in the rest of the world, it's not great. We have amazing students, but the infra is nothing for us to be proud of. And last point, I know we're running out of time, but just one last point, that we talk so much about STEM. I'm a great advocate of STEM myself, but do you think we're doing some disservice to children who may not feel they're adequately, you know, kind of, you know, good in these areas? And so therefore, we are crushing their confidence with respect to how they experience education. Because, you know, we speak with so much of reverence with STEM related subjects, but when we look at the other sort of arts and the other sort of social sciences, there's a little bit of foo-fooing around it. So, you know, that's important. Do you think it's important as an educationist? And should we be kind of more fair towards the different streams of education we have? Okay. That's all. Thank you.
So very interesting questions, and I'll give very quick responses. So Vaishali, we have a Persons with Disability Act, which has been passed, and 21 disabilities are part of that act. And all schools and all colleges are to, by a Supreme Court order and by Act of Parliament, admit such persons. So schools have become inclusive spaces, so have colleges. But within the persons with disability, we have a 4% quota for them. Within persons with disability, it's the visually challenged and the orthopedically challenged who dominate the disability sector. So they have their own set of problems. So that is one thing which I wanted to flag. And so we are not only focusing on the socially marginalized, we're also looking at the disabled. The second question which you've raised is that the discourse of the 90s used to somewhere resist, you know, the entry of the private sector and the multinational sector, etc. But you're saying if we have good private institutions, we already have some good private universities. But, you know, the debate is that if education, welfare and education is a public good, which they declare it is. So should you be then privatizing it to such an extent that the private sector sets up a power hegemony. It's a debatable point. I'm not going to, I think I'll have a private discussion with you on this, because this is also determined partly by our ideological positions and our leanings. But the state has declared that education is a public good and education is for welfare. So when you look at that kind of a focus, you have to take your cues from that issue. The STEM approach, because it's contemporary and new and it's just been introduced in our schools, it is there, but it's not the only approach to science teaching and learning and education. It's not that the liberal arts are not being taught. It's not that the performing and fine arts are not being taught. All of them are being taught. So it's a more holistic perspective, but STEM has its own contributions. And until we try it and test it and take it on, we won't know what the repercussions, consequences, and results are. I think Ranu Chacha is saying, let's call it a day now.
Ranu Chacha, I'll just take just 1 minute because there's an interesting comment from Ruhi. And it's difficult for everybody to read chat. It says, Ranu Mama, just to add to what everybody has said in response to your question, I wanted to add that 1, management schools have started getting professors of practice, in brackets, industry experts as faculty. This has helped improve the practical aspect of learning in a management classroom. 2, several companies run year-round programs at management schools to create traction with the students as future employees. This helps increase their interface with industry, which improves their employability as well. I think the more we can do things like this, the better will be the student training and employability. So thank you, and I hand you back to Ranu Chacha.
Hi family, this was hugely enjoyable. I hope all of you were as engaged as I was. And I thank you Namita so much for an excellent session today. And all the other speakers that you invited were very knowledgeable. Rashmi, Kirti, Veena, Gigi, they were all spectacular. I just want to make a very short announcement that next session will be on living with COVID. This will be led by GV and a couple of others who we are yet to identify. I have begun to identify them. And this will be held on the 6th of September. And then 2 weeks later on the Sunday, whatever Sunday that is, I think is the 20th of September, we are having the Kudwar story.
Wow.
Right? And this will be led by Dakshita. I haven't spoken to her. I hope she doesn't refuse me. But this will be led by Dakshita. All right. So basically, just this is the announcement. I really enjoyed myself, and I hope all of you did. And please pass your comments on the family chat, so that those who are not here understand that they missed something special. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you, Kevin, for being here. And
thank you.
Very nice, lively, and enriching our perspective building process. Thank you.
Ranu and Namita.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Arey wah, Arjun.
But I'll leave you with a thought. Ranu, may I?
Yeah, he's
Ranu, go ahead.
Chacha, go ahead.
Is education all about ability and livelihood and not about living and life and making good citizens out of
क्या कह रहे हो? सुनाई नहीं दे रहा है.
Is education only about employability and livelihood and not about life and in making good human beings and good citizens?
Yes.
It does. It does talk about good citizens and good human beings. It does.
Vishu, the new education policy does talk about, talks a lot about value education. A lot about value education.
I hope they also walk the talk.
No, they do.
She's not read anything.
Okay. Wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Ranu, wonderful.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.